conflicts between the city and START, and again, apparently we're not communicating well again, because I don't think they understand. They're thinking we're trying to curtail them, and I'm trying to give them room to expand. So let me circle back and try again. This is an economic development discussion. As a community, we have really a couple areas left. We have a little bit of land in Maid. We've got the airport, and we've got the East End, are our biggest areas that we have left that can be developed. And so that's why we wanted to tee up the airport. Maid's close to being done. The East End, we're doing a lot of work, but that's going to develop as it comes together. We can make things favorable, but obviously it's going to take people wanting to invest in that area. So the airport's where we've been working hard the last year and a half or so. And to that end, we've been working on the new master plan, the airport layout plan, and especially given the remaining lease issues with START skydiving, this discussion needed to happen, because the two avenues that we're going to put in front of you are to continue as we have for the last several years, which means, in the past we've had approximately an $80,000 subsidy by the general fund. We have not put a lot of our money into it. START has been the biggest tenant, and it's kind of done its own thing. And we can continue to do that. We have laid an awful lot of groundwork to do more than that. But for John and I to finish our discussions, we need to know whether we're moving forward with advances on the airport or not, whether we're going to move forward with these capital expenditures, because if John's going to stay in his building, then he and I need to have a discussion about how to use the lease to finish that up. If we're going to expand the airport, and part of that, which is what we're going to recommend, is that John moves to the other end, then that's a completely different discussion on how to resolve the remaining differences between us. And so that's why we needed to have this discussion tonight and get some direction from council. You heard Nick talk about successful airports are having a plan. We started our plan in 2014, and we've been working on it ever since. You've heard the infrastructure things we've done, and that's, why did we turn down START when they wanted to take over the Jets hangar? Because we had a plan that moved them to the north side, and that was not where we intended them to expand. So we did tell them, no, that was not the right answer for where we were heading, where we've been heading since 2014. You've heard us talk about the PACE district, which is now citywide. You've talked about the opportunity zone, which we worked hard to get, and the airport is our opportunity zone for that program. We've got the longest uncontrolled runway, apparently now except for Springfield, in a 250-mile radius. We've gone to the state legislature and gotten $750,000 in capital for the education. You heard Nick talk about the lack of technicians. We are addressing that with Cincinnati State. We're addressing that with Butler Tech. We've been talking with Marlin at the school district. We are graduating hundreds of kids each year from Middletown City Schools, and a number of them are not going to go on to college. We have a chance to give them a working wage job and create our own workforce with people that live here in town and have access to education that's affordable and gets jobs that we need in this area. You've heard us talk about our certified land and what that means. That, if you've been through, I know a couple of you were there when we did this with the airport and the site selector came in. They talked about the topography. They talked about access to water. They talked about access to utilities. All the things that would make, when somebody says, hey, I'm thinking about bringing a business here and putting a building up, that they would need to know, we are getting certified by the state of Ohio, so we can go, we have 100 and some acres. There you go. We have it all ready for you. We are doing everything we can to put you back on the map and best utilize that. And the answer is we're trying to create exactly the plan that Nick was talking about that makes you a successful airport. And so part of that is to resolve moving John to the north end. He can expand there. He flew me up to Illinois and showed me a beautiful $2 million facility that had beach volleyball. It had all kinds of cool stuff, had a beautiful restaurant, fantastic facility. And they were able to do more jumps because John's pretty well tapped out where he's at in his hangar. There's just no more room with his configuration to do that. And so we're not only going to recommend that they stay, we're going to recommend that they expand and go to the north side, and we establish a drop zone there, and that we then can do those other two wings, which is the general aviation corporate side and the industrial side off a hook. And so again, that's why when we start talking about millions of dollars, it's the process of configuring that airport in that 2014 area as we laid it out with the 3 different concentration areas, with the recreation across the top. Again, as Maria would tell you, separate them and allow them to expand, but keep them in a place where there's the least opportunity of them being near the runway, being near the taxiway, and those types of things. And so that's going to require a new facility for them. It's going to require a road in from Germantown. It's going to require a new parking lot. And those are the types of things, but those are the tools that open us up to do all the different things that we've been talking about at the airport, to get corporate hangars. And we've had people on site talking about investing in our airport, because we are now starting to get management together. We're starting to get the pieces together that we could make us do that. You heard John talk about minimum standards and things like that. That's one of the advantages of bringing Dan in from Akron, our airport manager. We have beginning drafts now of leasing standards, minimum standards for the airport, standard operating procedures, which we have never had in the detail that they should have been done. This is where, in 2005, the finance director was running the airport, and as long as the rent showed up, we weren't doing a whole lot else. It's time to take this from that type of an operation into an operation that 10 years from now is making you jobs and revenues. And people are coming to Middletown to skydive. People are coming for corporate. We have jobs because, again, we're training people in avionics and drone repair and all the things that are out there that are up and coming. That's what we're trying to do. We are not trying to start skydiving. We're trying to move them and let them expand, because right now they're not able to do that where they're at. And so, again, the status quo was like, I really don't think you should do that. That's a terrible idea. It wasn't designed to malign START. It was to say, we can do that, but you're taking one of your 2 last remaining assets, and you are basically going, if somebody shows up, we'll take a look at it. And I think we can do so much better. We've laid so much groundwork for you to be able to go out and recruit. You heard Matt talking about getting into the trade shows. This is where we go from just having an airport to having a professional ED staff, professional airport manager, professional airport layout plan and master plan, all the things that Nick's talking about that would allow us to be successful at this airport. This is what we are proposing, but this is why we are at that go or no-go phase, because up to this point, it's been a concept, it's been ideas, it's been discussions. Now it's going to get down to the nitty-gritty. If we're going to do this, then we got to sit down with Butler Tech and Cincinnati State and work out leases. We got to talk about what this thing's really going to cost to build and what the lease rates are going to be. We're going to have to talk about all the other things that we would put together so that when I bring it to you, it makes sense. But the first piece of that is we're going to have to start spending money to design things and put these things going, and then eventually bring you large capital projects. And if we're not ready to do that, then the airport layout plan and the airport master plan and our resolution will start on their lease things. It's an either-or discussion, and that's why it was important for us to have this discussion with you tonight. And I apologize for taking 2.5 hours. But if you're going to spend millions of dollars, 2.5 hours is not a lot of time to do this. And again, we're not asking you to say, hey, we're spending $10 million, but what we are saying is, do you understand the concept? Are you on board with the concept? You're going to see each piece of this as it comes over the different years, where we say, and like I said, my job is to bring you something that says, here's phase 1, here's what's going to cost, here's how we're going to finance it, here's the stack of ways to finance it, here's the payback, here's the return on investment, and here's what we can get out of it and the break-even point of doing that. And that's what you should expect to get from us. And so that's what we're asking you, though, is to again, we're at that go to no-go where it's time to start spending money from concept to execution. And so.
Question for you then.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm in total agreement of of the master plan. But what I'm not so on is if we're gonna basically dislocate skydiving from one side to the other, are we gonna help subsidize the move?
I think we have to. Yeah, absolutely. But again, he has a lease payment with us now. We would have to negotiate a lease payment with him in the new facility and what that looks like. But again, that's a completely different discussion than do we build an addition onto his existing building, leaving where he's at, and which is what our lease says, versus do we invest that money in the north end and do something different? And again, John wants to know where to put his money. I need to know where to put our money so that he and I can have an intelligent discussion on how this might come together.
Does our lease allow him to move?
It doesn't say either way. So, I mean, we would have to negotiate that a move.
I mean, I've heard, she and I sat in on a meeting that we had with the airport people, and I guess there was a lease that was written back in the day under previous administrations and stuff that wasn't kept up to par, and
Correct.
things were, and I just don't want to see that. If we write a lease with somebody, I want to see us follow through step by step.
Yeah, that's why we're having this discussion. I don't want to solve this 3 times.
Yeah.
And that's why I want to have this discussion, because when John and I sit back down and we talk about how we're going to resolve this, at the end of this, I want he and I to sign a memorandum of understanding or change an addendum to the lease, whatever the form it takes, where we agree that everything has been solved and we are both ready to go back to do business, and this is all moving forward in a way that both of us can live with.
And now I'm going to ask John a question from the standpoint of, you're the biggest moneymaker out at the airport right now for us, for the city, for yourself. Moving across the airport, okay, let's say is it a viable alternative for you?
Well, let me start by saying thank you for qualifying a couple of things, because for 10 years we've had that thorn of an unfulfilled lease, and it's been, it's kind of been a thorn, and but people say things within your administration that contradict what you just said here, and that's the reason these people are here tonight, a lot of them. And I think we've got to be careful with what's said. I have a great deal of respect right now for Dan Dickton, I really do. I don't know if Dan is here, but we got a great working relationship because he communicates, and he's communicating, I think, incredibly effectively with us. And I respect that. And he and we met out front one day, and I said, Dan, I will be there to support you, and I will not, do anything that would contradict his position and role. And we've done that, and we're going to continue to do that. So our relationship is not contentious out there. It's a very positive one. As far as moving, we want what's good for our airport, okay? I didn't come to Middletown to make a fortune. I make my money somewhere else. I came to Middletown because I love the community, and we were able to grow here. We did something special. So I'm committed to the community. If it's good for us and it's economical to where we're not taking it in the shorts, yes, we would move to that side of the airport. But you got to look at a lot of different things. We're talking about an education hangar. And I just want to quickly address the discussion about the military contract. It was a 3-year contract. That hangar is going to sit like that for another 2 years, I guarantee you. It's going to be another 2 years before we have a facility on the other side. We could have still brought that $6 million worth of economic impact to Middletown instead of signing a $1 lease with another organization. That to me is not, we're talking about ramp fees and different ways to create revenue. That to me was irresponsible. Okay? So I think we got to talk about what's responsible right now. And that's fulfilling the obligation to us first before you talk about building an education facility and investing, because $750,000 is not going to build that hangar. You're going to have $2 to $3 million in it, guaranteed. So you're still putting money in that. So I say the plan is a great plan. I support it. But fulfill the obligations that you currently have in place before you move forward with those plans. And we will support it. If the consultant thinks it's a great idea for us to be over there and we're going to close that grass strip runway, that makes sense to me. And we support that. But I'm just asking that we're talking about communicating honestly and putting a memorandum in place that we can all agree to. Let's take care of that first, because that's what's right. We've got a motto. The motto is think, dream, fly at Star Skydiving. And I believe that. And I believe we got to do that here. We got to think about what we're doing. We can dream, but then we got to ultimately fly together. And that's what I'm asking, that we fulfill that commitment first. And if we get to agreement, that's where we're moving, build away, man. Build that education hangar. I don't think it's the right thing. Personally, as a businessman, I wouldn't make that investment, because you've got Montgomery County out there, has a great school that puts out AMPs, and they've got a great program. You've got Butler Tech that has a program. You've got Cincinnati State that has a program. Those jobs, those students already exist. And so you're going to talk about putting $3 million into something on a what if. I personally would not invest in that if I was an investor on what ifs. But I would invest in what I know. And I know that we bring an economic impact of between $5 and $10 million a year to this community. That we fill the bars up, that we fill the restaurants up, that our people go there, that we tell them to go eat there. I can tell you that we occupy the hotels. That's a known fact. So what I ask, yes, to answer your question, we would gladly move to that side of the airport. But fulfill your existing obligations before you move on to something else. Anything else from me? But thank you for addressing that, because I don't have an issue with Middletown. I love this community. And we want to thrive in this community. We want to help the community. So I want to put anything out there that people think otherwise. We're not at war with this community, because we love it. But we're also honorable, and we follow through on our commitments. And I'm just asking the same in return. Thanks.
Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Atkins, on your
No, Your
perspective? Do we want to open up for some additional public comment, or we got to?
If it's needed, because like I said, I had a feeling that 30 people were going to tell us how great skydiving was, and we know that.
Yeah.
If you still need to do that, we'll certainly allow you to do some of that, but
Okay.
come on up, Dave.
Coming down. Okay.
So I'm going to take
Can
a
we get
couple
your name
minutes.
for the record, Mr. Pierce?
Dave Pierce, 607 Terre Oaks Drive, Middletown.
We're not going to swear
I
you
feel
in.
like we did this last
That's
night.
okay. I was here last night, so I'm on a roll, so I felt very comfortable coming up here again. So I'm just going to briefly hit one point. Tourism. You know that the three largest tourism, aside from what Start Skydiving does, the three largest events in town around tourism, I'm involved with all three. Obviously the Ohio Challenge, which we're going to talk about next week. We're talking about 30 to 50,000 visitors, depending upon the weather, that come in for that weekend. We're talking about 70% of those people come from outside of Middletown, and about 6 to 10% of those people come from outside of the state. What a wonderful way to show off our community, right, and get people here and recruit people here to see our community than that event. But decisions that you're going to make about the airport are going to impact that event and the viability of that event. It is at risk, and you need to know that. The other events that I want to bring up, because I'm not naive enough to think that that fence line that runs between Hook Field and Smith Park couldn't move someday. We hold two big soccer tournaments here each year, in the spring and in the fall. Each of those tournaments draw about 20,000 people into Smith Park and some other parks in the surrounding community of Franklin and Monroe, because Smith Park isn't big enough. And we fill every hotel from the Dayton Mall down to Union Center. Every hotel is packed. And our restaurants, for example, on Verity Parkway, beg us every year, tell us when that soccer tournament is, because we've got to get more staff and more food. We sell out. So I'm here to sort of put a warning shot across the bow. Don't move the fence. I know you have the ability to move it, but you're going to put those tournaments at risk. And if you don't want 40,000 people a year coming in for those soccer tournaments on those weekends, if you think that's important, keep the fence where it is. So I wasn't planning on speaking beyond that tonight, but I'm a banker and I listen to a lot of pitches, okay? People were always wanting to get into our pocket for money. And so I applaud the city's efforts to try and maximize the airport. But something has really struck me tonight. I've been going to Smith Park for 51 years, mostly in the early years picking daisies in right field playing baseball. And except for start skydiving, nothing has changed in 50 years at Hook Field. I think I figured out why that's the case tonight. We're talking about a flat industry, a 2.5 or 2.7% growth rate over 30 years. Hell, that's declining, okay? That is no growth industry. Then I'm hearing limited workforce, limited management experience. I'm hearing excess capacity out there in the industry. I'm not hearing a compelling niche for why we make the investment at that airport. I'm not hearing it. Now look, this is my first meeting and I listened to 2 hours worth of talk. And I would say there is a lot of work to do to build out that compelling case to make an investment. Because at this point in time, putting my banker hat on, this is a pipe dream. I think your best bet is ride with the horse you got. Deal with the devil that you know and versus the devil that you don't know. No disrespect. Because you know how I respect you, John. Thank you.
Hey, Dave. Dave. What was it, your initial statement about the balloons and repercussions coming down the pike? What are you talking about there? Just give me a heads up.
Parking.
Parking.
Access.
Okay, so they're parking in the airport, is what you're saying?
Well, we do a couple things there. We launch balloons from the airport. I don't know how that might be impacted in the future. We do other things there as a part of the balloon event. I don't know about rides we provide, helicopter that's there. I just don't know. There's so much up in the air right now that I don't have clarity. Access to the airport to support the event, and then parking is definitely an issue. Okay?
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Anything else, Mr. Atkins?
No,
There you go.
Oh. Get your name for the record, please.
Yeah, it's Matt King, KNG, 7 North Sutphin Street. So I recently joined the Airport Commission Board, new to Middletown, grew up in Westchester, Liberty Township. I'm a business owner. Just want to make a couple comments, not to the context or content that was talked about tonight, but just the process in which, as a new citizen of this town, that I've noticed. You know, we've worked with the city of Middletown a lot, or I just think it's ironic that the biggest issues that we're talking about tonight would be skydiving and the educational facility. It's very apparent that there's been conversations with Cincinnati State and Butler Tech. I never saw any written correspondence to have Cincinnati State come here tonight or Butler Tech, other than the fact of a public forum. The other thing I think is very interesting is, the fact that a lot of people have recognized Dan tonight, and this is an airport workshop, but on this agenda we have nothing from the newly hired airport manager. And so as someone that's new to this town, as a business owner, things like that, I'm looking at, this is about the development and the growth of the airport, and I get that he's a contractor, but the second bullet point of his qualifications are ability to make effective presentations to the city council, commissions, mayor, community, and business organizations, and other stakeholders regarding airport issues and development. Kind of interesting, right? We're talking about growth, what we're doing. We're hearing a lot from consultants tonight, and we have Dan in the back that everybody has referenced. John, that's affecting your future business. You know, I'm not in this official capacity tonight, but I work for Butler Tech. You know, we work a lot with Dan. And, you know, as someone who is a citizen, not as an employee right now, if I'm looking at the future development and growth of this town, you know, we've got some key players that just aren't really, I think, being recognized and or communicated. I don't know if he was intentionally asked not to speak or who organized this, but it's just very kind of interesting to me. So I love this town. You know, I do a lot of business in this town. I think this town has amazing growth, but from a structural standpoint, you know, just communication. How do we communicate? The freaking airport manager is not even on the agenda. So that's all I have to say. If there's any questions, I'll take it.
Thank you, Mr. King.
Yeah.
So certainly appreciate that perspective. So, okay. Anything else from council? We got. Oh, okay.
I do want to comment on Dan. I think he's done a fantastic job.
If we get your name for the
Rich
record,
Beavis.
please.
I was the former airport manager, but I want to talk to you about corporate aviation because I was doing that a lot. Had a lot of corporate customers into the airport. Talked to every one of them that came in. I made deals for fuel. I made deals for them to come in. But what corporate aviation is a convenience for the corporations, all right? They're not going to fly to Middletown and drive to Cincinnati because they flew in from New York, took an hour and a half to get here. They're not going to drive 45 minutes to downtown Cincinnati. So why is it a convenience? Well, things like fuel prices, not going to get them in here. Things like hangars are not going to get them in here. It is going to be convenient. Why is it convenient? Why does Lunken have such a huge corporate? Why do they have such a huge corporate following down there? Because it's convenient to all those corporations that are down there. Why does Dayton and why does Wright Brothers have great corporate business? Because there are corporations there. We have a great airport. We don't have great corporations. We don't have corporations that can afford an aircraft. And corporations that can afford aircraft, like we want in here, are large corporations, all right? Those corporations also have customers and vendors that also have large aircraft that would come in here. So I think it's a great idea that we're going to build this stuff at the airport, but we don't have any corporations to put in here. Unless, do we have corporations in our hand right now? I mean, do we have corporate jets showing up? I mean, that is my question. It's like, you can do all you want, but I'm telling you, if you don't focus on bringing business to your town that can support this airport, the airport will grow by itself with corporations moving to this town. And that will bring jobs, that will bring airport jobs, that will expand the airport. Why? Because they need a place that's convenient to get the heck in and out of here. They don't want to drive all that time, and they want to get in their plane, fly to Chicago, have their meeting, fly back home, and they want to drive home and see their kids and have dinner, and that's what they want to do. So they're not going to drive 20 minutes. I had great conversations today with Bob Zook of TubeWorks. Okay, they're a corporation in this town. They do have an airplane. They don't base it here, but they use this airport 3, 4, 5, 10 times a week. When they look at a location for a new plant, they look at two things. First thing is tax abatement. Second thing is, how close is it to that airport? If it's more than 20 minutes for the airport, they won't even consider that plant. And he was sorry he couldn't make it here tonight because he really wanted to tell you what it's about. And so we got all these great plans. I love it. It's great. But let's get the corporations in here first that will bring their aircraft here. And that's, I think, the nut of the whole deal. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Please.
I'm Brad Short. I actually live in Trenton. Didn't intend to say anything. I'm on the executive committee of the Ohio Challenge, and I came to support that and the Hart family. But it occurred to me when you started talking about infrastructure that I had a question. I'm a project manager for John R. Jurgensen, and we're one of the largest infrastructure providers in Ohio. So about 3 million tons of asphalt a year, among other things. So I was the project manager paving a maintenance hangar at Dayton Airport called PSA. I've got another one I'm going to pave in the spring, an aircraft maintenance hangar at Dayton. I've got one for RG Aviation at Springfield, Beckley, and I've been asked to provide estimates on several aviation hangars at the vacated Airborne Express facility at Wilmington. And so that made me think of the question for you guys. In a business with 2.7% growth over the next 30 years, how are you going to compete with people that already have everything you're trying to offer? So that's just food for thought. That's really all I had. So
Okay. Appreciate you coming down.
got a mountain to climb.
Thank you.
Everything I've handled since I've been here has been a mountain to climb. It's just how we've been.
Well, got someone else? Good evening.
Brian Marsloff, FAA Master Parachute Rigger. I've been in the skydiving business for nearly 25 years now, and been in airports that have hosted skydiving operations all over the country. They're from private fields to large airports that have quite a bit of corporate business. One of the reasons we see so many people here tonight is from the time this idea was presented in the Middletown Journal. It was, are we going to go after corporate business and pretty much say we don't care about skydiving? That's the way it was presented. That's the way the Journal presented it to us. That's why everybody's up in arms. That's why everybody's upset. Because we were basically told, hey, there's a chance they're going to say, they don't want you anymore. Okay? I can tell you that my skills as master parachute rigger, you're going to find 3 or maybe 4 people with my skill and experience north of Georgia that can do what I do. I have research and military contracts that come to me on a regular basis to support this, and that's one of my questions. It seems like that everybody is taking it as a given that we're going after more corporate business. Well, why are we going after corporate business? There's already a support for that. Why not go after the new business? The whole industry of aviation is changing. Drones are changing, aircraft is changing. Why are we not going after the R&D businesses? The businesses that don't want to be at an airport that has a ton of corporate jets coming in and out of it. You know, why aren't we using the resources that we already have to their fullest extent? I believe in the economic growth. I know that we need to move forward. I want to see it. But I'm just not sure that trying to increase our corporate jet traffic is the way to go.
Appreciate that. So. You else have any thoughts to come down and share? Okay. Anything to wrap up, Mr. Atkins?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be tonight, but it needs to be soon. I need some indication from council whether or not we are moving forward with these projects. They're in your budget for next year. Even that being said, if you say you don't want to do it, obviously we will not execute those projects even if they're in the budget. But we're going to be looking for a nod up and down on whether or not, because that's going to, as we finish our airport layout plan, our master plan, this is where we need a policy decision from council as to the style of what we're doing, and because then we'll establish that master plan or airport layout plan, and then again that will either keep us or help us get grants or keep us from getting them based on, again, our established plan that we put together. So
I need a point of clarification because I feel like I've heard corporate jet a lot tonight, but for the last year I've been hearing maintenance and large aircrafts landing. Which is it, or is it both?
And that's why we brought Nick, is the corporate jets. There's not a lot of business out there, but there is more and more coming with the corporate industrial repairs where you pull a plane in, you do major work to it for some period of time, you send it back out. Those are the types, and again, those are the types of positions. A lot of drone work. Butler Tech is very excited about the drones, and they're not talking about the little ones you get that, you know, they're this big that fly up. They're talking about the ones that are the size of a small car, the avionics that go in it, the mechanics that go in it. This is the stuff that Cincinnati State and Butler Tech what we're doing. They believe it's cutting edge. They believe it's where we're heading. That's the people they are trying to train. That's the workforce we're going after.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, I don't think when I said that, successful airports have a plan, I need to clarify or qualify that a little more. A plan that is not only in place but flexible and allows the airport and the community to, pivot as, the conditions change. I mean, we have a saying in our business that, the only for sure thing about a forecast that is wrong from day one, it's just a question of how wrong. So having that plan in place, is reasonable and but flexible as well, allows you to make those changes. And a lot of the times, when the FAA harps on safety, the biggest thing is risk, mitigation of risk. It's impossible in an industry like aviation to completely eliminate risk. But the first thing the ADO is going to do when they review your master plan or your plan that you're having in place is, what are you doing to make this the safest operation possible? And I think it's, from personally my standpoint as an airport commission member, the biggest thing we want to do is leave as many doors open for this airport to thrive as possible. Don't prematurely close any door. And I think the best scenario for this airport is for the skydiving to thrive and grow and be the big user of the airport that it is, but also enable as many other users and types of the airport as possible, be it education, be it corporate aviation. Corporate aviation just happens to be the segment that is growing the most within a segment of the aviation industry, or the UAS, the drones, the R&D, the avionics, any of that, all those different aspects are ripe industries for growth, and the best thing that the city could do is enable that growth in a flexible manner and allow the airport and the city as a whole to react to things as they change.
Nick, a question for you.
Yeah.
Is there a big demand right now? I mean, your numbers stated that there's going to be a demand for mechanics, there's going to be a demand for pilots, blah, 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 for the future. Right now, are there a lot of places, a lot of airports, facilities around now that are just sitting in mothballs that are not being utilized for maintenance buildings and things right now?
There are. I mean, and it's for a variety of reasons. Consolidation through the entire aviation industry has wreaked havoc on that. You've seen a lot of the operators consolidate or be purchased by others. That then, somebody buys up an airline or a cargo operator and moves it all to their headquarters. The purchasing entity moves it to their location, and then now you have the purchased sitting vacant and dormant. So there are. So it's not false that you have an uphill hill to climb in terms of certain aspects, and it's important not to be myopic in the fact that you're only looking at one segment. You're looking and keeping the door open to as many possibilities as you can. That's the biggest thing. And on that plan is maintaining your flexibility. Having the plan in place that allows you to have a development in a certain area of, a certain kind, whether it's, maintenance or corporate or industrial, but having that on your plan allows you to go and develop it without having to go through an entire another's approval process with the FAA, which can delay it. And not having that plan is sometimes a deterrent for anybody to come in and develop, whatever it may be. It doesn't have to be just corporate. So the biggest thing is just have that plan that's flexible and keeps those doors open as much as possible.
Are there choices that we can make that preclude us from grants? Is that part of the issue?
Did you say, are there choices?
Are there choices we can make in terms of building things and having different?
It's more from omission. If things are not in your plan, if it's not a part of your master plan, then the FAA is going to look at it and say, this is not what you said you were going to do, so we're not going to give you a grant for things you have not said that.
They won't keep you from doing it ultimately. They're going to ask you to go back through the planning process and re-justify it, which can take time. And the longer something takes, the opportunities may go away.
The key advantage I see of this plan is one, opening up additional acreage for future development. I mean, and that can take a variety of purposes. It doesn't have to be
correct
aircraft maintenance. It could be, logistics, it could be a number of manufacturing things, we have the rest of the.
And that's why we're sitting down with the industry experts to have those discussions. But the groundwork was to get the opportunity zone, to get the land certified, to lay all the groundwork so that when we identified those and we got those in the master plan, we were doing the things that the groundwork was there for us to be competitive with our runway, with our financing, with land available, with certification of the land, with all that stuff, workforce that we can develop.
And remind me again on the statewide, the selection of the opportunity zones. I know those were somewhat limited. We've got one. And
We've got one, and Jennifer, do you remember how many was in Ohio?
Sure. But a certain advantage that gives the investors in that in terms of some
Correct. Deferred capital gains. There's a lot of,
going to be
and there's some nice stuff
Potential
coming
game changer
together.
for
The
us.
rules are starting to come together on that, and it looks like it's going to be very favorable.
So, and again, with the revitalization of the Hook Drive areas there and stuff like that for additional industrial uses, it's going to be a nice opportunity going forward. So.
My main concern moving forward is I want to get the airport off an annual subsidy. I want it to be a revenue generator for the city. And I want to pick a realistic option to do that. And that's my main concern. I don't want to get too far out over our ski tips and build it and they will come. If this is a realistic option, I think Nick said it perfect. Safe option that keeps all the doors open. And if we can have a segmented conversation about that, this year we're going to do this, next year we're going to do this.
Correct.
That's something I would entertain.
And each piece you will get to see, you will get to evaluate, you will get to hear why we believe it works and what your return on investment is.
Right. So to Mr. Pierce's point of we're not putting $10 million worth of chips on the table and say, this is our bet. We're
Correct.
going to evaluate each one.
But we are laying the groundwork so that if it works out, we have the ability to do that.
Yeah. Okay. Other thoughts or directions for Mr. Atkins this evening?
I appreciate your time listening. This was worth the 3 hours of, give you a lot to think about.
Thank you. Yeah. Good stuff. We got more ahead of us, so it was the late fall here.
Yes.
All right. With that, we're adjourned until Tuesday the 20th, 5:30 or 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock for the
the
work session,
yes.
5:45 for the
5:45 in
meeting.
these chambers. Thank you all. Have a good night. Keep it all straight.